Creative. Thank you for rejoining us. If you've watched before or if you're new, thank you for joining us. Culture Creative is a platform where we have a conversation with amazing people that are doing incredible things at the top of their game. So hopefully you'll be inspired by something that we might talk about that can help you move forward, whether it's in creativity or with your culture. I'm Luke Gledhill, the host. I run a brand development agency here in Los Angeles. I also host the 21st Club think tank, which brings together people that do good and give back through social, spiritual, and environmental initiatives. So today, I'm extremely pleased to have an amazing guest. I wanted to bring him on, Kohl. Welcome, Kohl.
Hi. Hey,
Hello,
thanks for
mate.
having me. Nice to see you, Luke.
Yeah, you too, mate. First off, I just want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate taking the time out of your day because I know how busy you are in running a couple of brands and how much effort and passion you put into it. So, Colt, let's start off. Give us a brief overview of, I mean, say your name and then what you do currently.
Yeah, so Kohl Crecelius, I'm the CEO and co-founder of a brand called a ethical apparel brand called Known Supply. We have another brand, and actually the first brand that I started over 14 years ago that operated in this space of this intersection of social good and sort of the fashion industry, called Crochet Kids International. That is a part of my work as well in my portfolio. It's the reason why I wear a red beanie every single day. Fun fact about me. So yeah, that's the 2-second intro.
I love it. I love it. And I was wondering about the beanie. Now that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
Cole, give us a bit of a backstory with Crochet Kids, or even before that. What got you into fashion, especially in an ethical sense, and which brand came first as well?
Yeah, so I would even say to this day, our clothing serves really as a means to an end. Like I am a owner of a few, like, what would be known as like fashion labels or brands today, but that's not the core purpose for why we really do anything that we do. Our origination with this space started very early, probably in early college. So when I was 18 to like 20 years old, I had some pretty unique opportunities to do some international travel. This took place through originally a church that I grew up going to, and then it was volunteering with international aid organizations. And what was interesting about those experiences was a couple of things for me personally. It started to drive a passion for learning about just a global society, a global community, something I didn't have much access to growing up in the inland Pacific Northwest of the United States. But secondarily and most importantly, it gave me insight into how really a majority of the world lives, which is in extreme poverty. And so I was volunteering my time trying to, working with different aid organizations that were providing all of these solutions or trying to come up with ways to aid people in very dire circumstances. And one thing became really clear over a pretty short period of time through my experiences, even as a, young kid, it was that so much of the aid and so much of the ways that we were trying to help people, even the work that I was a part of, was focused on short-term impacts. It was focused on just trying to help people with food for the day, or a teaching program or a school program for a period of time. And very few of these efforts and interventions were focused on the long-term sort of capacity building of individuals in these tough places in developing countries all around the world. And so myself and a couple of my friends just said, this is broken. We got to think about a way that we could build into and empower people to rise above poverty and stand on their own 2 feet. And the funny backstory and the way it like came full circle for us and why it's even in the fashion space at all is that My two friends and I, at one point in high school, had a business where we crocheted beanies for skiers and snowboarders, and we were called the Crochet Kids. And we saw that as a tool. We said we could teach people. Originally for us, it was in Uganda. We could teach them this skill, and we could sell all the products that they're making back here in the States, and it could be this thing that's actually, a cycle of empowerment. It'd be sustainable in the revenue that we generate, and it would actually be helping people realize their capabilities, earn their own income, and think about their own future. And so
Wow.
Crochet Kids started in 2007 with that sort of premise. And we literally went to Uganda. We trained a group of, originally at that point, it was 10 women how to crochet. And we said, hey,
Wow.
we're going to give you this opportunity. And we're here to partner with you to help you realize your full capabilities and capacity, and it just started there very humbly, and then the Crochet Kids brand continued to grow.
Let me just, sorry to interrupt. I really
Yeah,
want to
no, please.
understand this. I've got a
Yeah.
picture in my mind, two white guys from
Mhm.
America in Uganda
Mhm.
teaching women how to crochet. Is that how
Mhm.
it went down, or was there a non-profit involved, or?
It's as odd and like very similar to how you're picturing it right now. Which, I think the one thing that I always encourage, young entrepreneurs or people getting started out is to lean into the fact that you're naive, that you don't know anything, and actually celebrate that as something that's positive. And I think what worked out for us was that we came with just an intention to help and with an idea, but we knew that we wouldn't be the ones to really create that change. We could only be a catalyst. And so we did partner with local organizations to start with, and built a local board of advisors. We wanted to be very sensitive to the fact that it's like we weren't there to solve or fix problems, because we didn't know or understand those problems really at all.
Yeah.
And so it was taking a posture, and just an approach that said, hey, we're here to help and to serve. This is something we feel like could be really beneficial in the long term, and we're going to commit to sort of helping this cycle to take place. But yeah, I think too often we get caught up in the fact that either we don't think we know enough, so we don't start, or we know too much and we kind of get in our own way.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's really important what you just said about holding in your mind the
Mm,
main reason why you may be starting something, and that for you guys was to be of help and of service. And quite often, I'm I do this myself. Quite often, you will think about an incredible idea and then start to implement those stages in your mind. But then the original idea seems to fall in the wayside because you
mm,
start thinking about business and margins and
mm.
other things like that. But if you then bring it back to that original idea, everything else will fall in place. And I think it's really important what you said there.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, it's those sort of the core concept, the core intention or mission. There's a plethora of words you could use to define what that is. It's ultimately the only thing that really establishes who you are, what your business or brand is about, and it's the only thing you can really rest on at the end of the day, because there will be a million other influences and real responsibilities when it comes to the business itself, and operating something that will withstand and operate profitably and last a long time. Like there's real considerations to be made there, but being clear on that purpose, is the most vital thing you really can do, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations in the last 3 or 4 weeks with people that had started brands, whether it was in the last few years or even longer ago, and felt lost and stuck in this current situation because they've gone so far away from their original concept and idea. And I keep explaining, look, what was the reason in the first place?
Yeah.
Revisit that, find that passion and that fire and that energy from those first ideas, and grow from there again.
Yeah, it's been interesting during this whole sort of current situation, the pandemic that we find ourselves in, because it's causing a lot of sort of internal reflection and sort of the external realities that are maybe forcing those more quickly, especially for brands and businesses. And you're seeing either brands thriving and realizing that how well their purpose aligns with this moment, or how their brand lives within this context, how it doesn't really change, but it breathes life into it. And you see other brands that are really struggling because they don't have that foothold, that place to stand on and say, this is who we are, and then this is what that who or the why behind what we do how it makes sense in this totally new context.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that any better, for sure. Let's go back to, from Crochet Kids, then when did Known Supply come in?
So coming around the 10-year mark of Crochet Kids, we did a lot of sort of internal soul searching, and we really, with all of our businesses, we've always had this really open hand with them to say, what is going well, like honestly, what is not, and what are the opportunities and the things that we see down the line. We had operated in more or less one capacity for over 10 years, and we didn't want to just continue on into the next decade just because we had done it one way. We didn't want to just say, yeah, that's what it's going to be, in the years ahead. There'd been so much that it evolved in the landscape of ethical fashion, of socially minded businesses. I mean, to give you perspective, Crochet Kids operated for its first 10 years as a nonprofit organization. We were a
Wow.
nonprofit that was generating, nearly all of our revenue through the production and sale of our products. And we confused the hell out of everybody. They didn't know what we were doing, and they said, "Are you a business? Are you trying to help people? Which are you trying to do?" And we would just say, "Yes, that's exactly what's happening. We're using business principles to help people." And so to get to your question, known supply for us was a couple things. One, we were recognizing that the impact of the brand Crochet Kids, both in the products that we were making, which were predominantly knit and crocheted headwear and accessories, and the just sort of reach of the mission was being was being stymied by the way that we were going about our business. And what I mean by that is that we were taking this idea that every one of our products was ethically made and it was hand signed by the person who made it. And that was so vital and important to us, but we wouldn't let anyone else touch it. We said, we sort of were sitting on our high and mighty horse and saying, like, hey, we're doing the best ethical work, and we have the most transparent supply chain. And we realized after a bit of time that us doing that, us sort of cornering that market, and saying we want as many shoppers to be introduced to the person who made their product, but at the same time we're going to hold on to this so tightly that only so many customers can really experience and enjoy that. We just saw that was backwards. And so known supply was our answer to that, and that we started a whole apparel collection in line. And then we also opened up sort of our production facilities, our story, to be a platform to other people, for businesses to purchase blank apparel from us and to print on, for us to do production and help other people make an inroads into this idea of ethical manufacturing and transparency. And we said we just believe our impact would be so much greater if we gave that thing that we held so dearly, if we were able to give it away and invite more people into experiencing that with us.
Wow, I mean, that is amazing that you were able to born or birth something new out of what you found you were doing the opposite with before, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to unpack that a bit
Yeah.
more with known supply,
Yeah.
because you went from 10 years crocheting beanies and
Mm-hmm.
hats
Yeah.
with people in Uganda, or whether that expanded, to essentially having a complete platform with known supply, which you just mentioned before. It's you create your own product, you release your own product, you source and you help manufacture for other people and brands, and then you have complete transfer. Like, that doesn't happen overnight. So explain a bit more about that.
Yeah, it's a little bit wild, and I would say that there was a transition period where with Crochet Kids, we did expand from Uganda. We had a second location in Peru, and we were starting to do more cut and sew apparel, and we were introducing more items into our line. And what was interesting that started to happen was more and more people started to come to us. This is sort of pre-known supply, really before or on the early stages of when we started thinking about more of this platforming concept. And people would say, hey, will you do, would you make stuff for us? Because we believe you guys are doing it the right way. Would you make stuff for us? And we said, whoa, that's interesting. And, we had a lot of internal dialogue around that. And eventually we took on a few projects. We had learned, we had learned how to do an increasing number of products well. And so we started to work and wade our toes into that water. But the other thing we realized was that it was really challenging for an individual brand like ourselves to like fully vertically integrate every aspect of supply chain and design and sales and marketing and everything. And so part of that transition to known supply was saying, who are the people who are doing apparel in an ethical way now, and at that point is 2017, and who can help us take on some of this production and allow for the scale that we wouldn't have if we were owning and operating our own production facilities. And Fair Trade came along as a great partner for somebody who was auditing and providing the standards we were looking for apparel production, that allowed us to say, okay, we can do this at scale. We can still deliver on our mission. We can still have all of our products signed by the person who made it. And that was really important. But one thing I did want to add that was like pretty important in my thinking about, opening up or this idea of giving away the thing that, we felt was most special to us was Elon Musk. If you follow him, I'm sure you do, and or other people watching, it's like there was a period probably, I don't know, at this point 7+ years ago, where he just gave away all of the patents to his technology behind Tesla's batteries and how their electric cars work. And on one hand you would say, this is crazy, why would you do that? But then you realized how smart he was being, because Elon Musk realized there would be no Tesla if there was no larger infrastructure and larger awareness and competition around electric cars in general. If the general consumer population wasn't thinking about electric as an option. And it sort of got me thinking about ethical apparel. And I was thinking, if we are one brand screaming from the rooftop and saying ethical apparel matters, like that's only going to reach so many people. But if we can get as many people sort of in our camp saying that same thing, then that could actually matter, and that could build an infrastructure and an awareness amongst apparel shopping category that would start to turn the tide.
I think that is incredible and amazing what you've just said, Kohl, because that goes back to what you mentioned earlier, in that essentially if you can provide the information for others to get on board, you get out of your own way.
Mm.
Rising tide, all ships
Yeah.
rise on a rising tide. And as you were saying that, it had me thinking about some ideas and projects that I'm throwing around. And the scary thing when I think about it is, how do you get out of your own way? Because ultimately, the idea is something that can live with so many other people, and their input and influence back can help elevate the initial and original idea. If, for example, I go ahead with an idea myself and try to control everything myself, it's probably not going to end up doing the best that it could do, like you
Mhm.
mentioned with what Elon Musk did with Tesla.
Mhm.
And it makes complete sense.
Yeah, and I think it really does go back to sort of where we started, which is like what's the like ultimately what are you trying to accomplish? And for us, we sort of had this, come to Jesus moment where we looked in the mirror and said, well, if our goal is to um, really change the way that people view apparel and want and start seeking out ethical options for the clothing that they wear. And we believe this happens by connecting a shopper with the maker of their item. We feel like that connection, that sort of humanity, interwoven into like this idea that the clothing I wear is made by somebody's hands. Like we said, then we need to introduce as many people as possible to the people who make their clothes. Like full stop. There's no question. Like if to do anything else would be to um, fall short or completely, restrict the reach of our mission and really what we want to do. And that started to help define what that forward facing strategy looked like, because then we could say, okay, then if the goal is to connect as many people as possible to the maker behind their item, then that gives us a whole different strategy to how we accomplish that. And it's less about being an individual cool brand that is like just doing their own vertical channel, and it's a lot more about partnership and how we disseminate that message and how we bring so many people on board. And the last thing I'll say is like the other thing we had to take an honest look at with ourselves was just like, it's myself and my co-founder. We just said like, and this is another thing I always tell young entrepreneurs is like, get to be really honest with what you're good at and what you're not. And don't, I spent way too long thinking I could do it all and I did it all well. Like I could manage people well and I'm really great at the creative and marketing side and I could probably do probably help on the logistical stuff. And I'm just like, the older I get and the more I've been in my work, the more I realize that there's a couple things that I'm pretty good at. I wouldn't even say great. And then there's a lot that I'm bad at. So my business partner and I sat down and just said, what are we like? Also, the missional side is this, and then what are the just tactical and practical things that we possess in our skill set as a unit that allows us to accomplish this other thing. And it came down to the fact that my business partner is really great logistically and from a supply chain standpoint. I'm a marketer and brand guy at heart, and we're both very people oriented. Neither of us are like the fashion connoisseur, neither of us are like, the designer, like laboring over every detail of a garment. Like we are all about, hey, the more people that we can get in on this story, we like people, so we want to work with them, and we know what we do well, and that helped to guide our direction also.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And the fact that you have a business partner that you're both able to bounce off each other and
Yeah.
know and move forward, as you've just said. There's one thing I really love is the tagline for Known Supply, the most human brand.
Yeah.
And you also talk about that you're humanizing the apparel industry.
Hmm.
I think that's so empowering
Hmm.
and powerful as well as a message. I think that a lot of other brands, big and small, whether it's in fashion or whatever industry they're in, they can really take inspiration from that to use as because ethics in fashion, it doesn't matter what you're making. Ethics really is ethics full stop for a brand and company.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about Supply House. What is Supply House?
Yeah. So Supply House is our arm that is devoted to equipping and sort of serving as a bridge to help other people operate in this ethical apparel space. So it happens through, we have blank inventory, almost like an alternative apparel or somewhere where you'd order blank inventory and get items screen printed or embellished for your company or your event or what have you. We do that. Or we do custom projects where we will, work with a client that wants to produce a higher volume of product, somebody like Verve Coffee, for example, or NPR, and we'll make, a fully custom sort of apparel merchandising package for them. And that's the arm of our work that's saying, how can we be here to be a guide to help people realize the power of ethical manufacturing. And ultimately what we're realizing, like, it's helping all these brands that have a value system or a social mission. It's really, all it's doing is helping them have their merchandise align with the value system that they already have. One of our early like clients or partners was a massive um, nonprofit organization that is fighting human trafficking, and and they were selling a lot of merchandise and doing, incredible work building this youthful movement around, helping people to care about this issue. But they had apparel that they didn't have the traceability or the understanding of necessarily where that was coming from. And so we got to partner with them and say, what if your apparel, the actual merchandise, before it even is in someone's hands, was already accomplishing and helping your mission just in its creation, that it's providing fair wage jobs and helping people avoid a life of slavery. And that was a really big light bulb moment to say, wow, there's in 2020 or in this past decade, every brand or every business has some sort of value system that they're starting to operate from. And it's a matter of just helping them deliver on that promise through the clothes that they sell or wear or share with their audience.
I think that, as you were saying that, Cole, it made me think, well, that's a no-brainer, really. Surely that should just be the foundation of all businesses and brands.
Yeah,
Exactly how you broke that down. I mean,
yeah.
it doesn't make sense that any big fashion brand or company or any other brand or company isn't doing that right now.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting because it's like we said, I mean, the brands that have a really clear sense of purpose, of identity, um, it's not one facet of who they are. It really, that identity flows through every aspect of their operations, of their company culture, of how they show up in the world, right? And so the merchandise that we sell, all those sorts of things, like every touch point that somebody has with our brand or our business, um, it tells them something. It like tells them what we stand for and who we're about. And so that it's I think only increasingly important in today's day and age. If you want to be a brand that has a really clear sense of identity, it's like it has to be through every touch point. You got to back up, what you're saying. You can have words on paper of like, here's our company value system, these are the 5 values. But if you're not backing it up with the actions and the inputs into your business, it's pretty easily like understood what's amiss.
Yeah, I mean, people can see through that even more so now than ever. Gen Z and millennials are really voting with their dollars, and we can see that all the time now. And I think we're fast tracking through that with the current situation we're in. I
Totally.
had
Yeah.
a conversation, one of these conversation episodes recently with After Aziz, a good friend of
Hmm.
mine. He wrote
Yeah.
a book called Good is the New Cool. And we spoke a lot about ethics in brands and companies and how nonprofits and NGOs play a big role in the
Hmm.
whole picture as well. So, Cole, explain a bit about the nonprofits and other people that you collaborate and work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, So I think it's, I said we started as a nonprofit. We made a transition in 2017 to establish our business as a benefit corporation, which is really pretty cool. I mean, this is something that wasn't really even a structure when we started in, 2007. And even if it was fairly shortly after that, um, it wasn't something that was recognized or I think as well put together as it is today. But for one, there's the B Corp community. So B Labs is an organization that its purpose is to help equip and build community around businesses that are trying to have social impact in this world. And they have a really robust kind of evaluation process that not only helps brands figure out where they're at right now, but it also helps create a path towards areas in their business that they can continue to improve upon. So that they're a great partner of ours, as well as Fair Trade USA is another group that I mentioned. Fair Trade USA, they originally started out and have been around for, a long, long while, decades. And they operated it mainly in like coffee and food and chocolate and those sorts of things. But in the past 10 years, have really made a concerted effort towards apparel and home goods. And what that means is they're onboarding different production facilities or factories around the world with a really rigorous auditing process, as well as some really vital programming and like fundraising for garment workers. So they've been great partners, and they've done a phenomenal job during this crisis. We're really grateful to partner with them because they have the systems in place to like deploy funds and to ensure that garment workers are really cared for during this time, even when so much of the industry and so much of garment manufacturing in general is like really in peril. So yeah, those are just a couple. And then we're constantly working and doing different projects using our apparel. We see it as, like I said, we see our clothes as a means to an end. We see it as a tool to raise money for different organizations or different businesses. One of the things we just did um, during this current crisis, just within the past month, is a number of local coffee shops here in Costa Mesa, where I live, were like really struggling to keep employees on, struggling to figure out how to operate in this new climate and takeout and all that. And so we made T-shirts and worked with another local mug company, sold those and gave 100% of the profits to these local shops, and we were able to raise like over $7,000 just to like
Wow.
just to bless them and say, hey, like we're for you. We love
Yeah.
coffee. We
Yeah.
want you to stick around. You're our neighbors. Let's, the phrase that's gone around everywhere, this idea that like we're in this together. We just want to embody that and use the tools and the things we have to make impacts now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. That was the Nominate a Small Business program, right?
Well,
And
yeah, that was a separate one. That was another thing that we
okay.
did during this time. Yeah.
So, well, I read on you had an incredible response from that, and I read one on your website, which was
Yeah.
from a small restaurant in Puyallup
Yeah.
up in the north near Seattle,
Yeah.
and they were saying that the restaurant helps to teach women, or helps women that are having issues, and I was blown away by it. So explain a bit about the Nominator Small Business Program.
Yeah, so that was another thing we were realizing, which was, speaking to this time and speaking to brands that, I can only speak from our experience, and I want to be careful not to say like, oh, we're like crushing it and like really helping but at the same time, like when we stand for humanity and when we say, we're the most human brand, like a time like this, if we're not if we as a brand are not stepping up and and standing for and alongside fellow people, our neighbors, just fellow small businesses, like we are failing at our mission.
Right.
And so as this was unfolding, one of the things we recognized was that so many businesses, whether they were dance studios or gyms, restaurants, coffee shops, they were being so impacted by the fact that people couldn't come in their doors. And what a lot of them were doing were pointing to their online store saying, hey, you can't come in, but if you could buy a gift card, if you can, and this is still happening obviously, but if you could buy something just to help us weather this storm. We were looking at what we have. We said we have t-shirts, we have apparel. Why can't we have people nominate local small businesses? It wasn't about Southern California. It was about anyone who wanted to nominate a business in their area and tell us a little bit about their story. And then we would choose a business and we would gift them 50 customized t-shirts. We got a few other brands and companies involved, and to the point where like every week we were choosing a different small business that we could give a product package to that was valued at $3,000 to $3,500, that if they were
Wow.
to able to sell that, that would be income for them. And it
Wow.
was all just donated and given. Um, and it felt so good, man. It was just like, this is something we have. This is one small way that we can utilize what we have and help businesses and people who are hurting right now. And yeah, over the course of like a month, we got over 1,700 nominations, um and it was both like really encouraging to see everyone being nominated, and it was really heartbreaking to see the volume of people impacted. But I think if I could say one thing about that, it's just like in anything, it's like we got to just pick one thing that we can do, even if it feels small or even if it's not going to solve the whole problem, and just try to do that thing. And that was our approach and our stance with that whole project, was like, hey, let's just do this. Like, we know it's not solving people's problems. We know we can't give away 50 t-shirts to 1,700 different businesses, but like we can help and we can point people to these businesses that were nominated. We've extended discounts to any small business during this time who wants to have merchandise to sell. So just thinking about ways we can utilize what we have to help, the current situation.
Well, the reason why I love that so much when you explained that just then is because that aligns back with what you started saying about teaching the women in Uganda how to crochet. It's like the old saying, you can feed someone for a day or you can teach them to fish and they can feed themselves for life. It's that
Yeah.
aligns exactly with that. You're empowering these small business owners to be able to create or have product to then sell to yeah, I love that. I love that. I'm going to put you on the spot now, Cole. I
Great.
would love to hear a story. You must have an incredible or funny story of all of these amazing makers that you've worked with over the years. Is there anything that pops to your mind?
Yeah, what's been really special about especially those like early years of our work. I mean, for context, like some of those original 10 women that we were a part of our work in 2007, 2008. I mean, still work with us to this day, which is amazing. And I just feel so lucky that we still get to have ties into those communities because yeah, it means so much, and that was like the core of why we existed. But I think some of the cool things that, thinking back to just our journey, was there's a few times. There's one lady in particular um, in Uganda named Beatrice, um, and our model, just for context, in Uganda was that we would give people jobs in crocheting, and then the goal would be that they would earn enough money and they would use that money to start other businesses or invest into property or land, and to really ultimately be self-sufficient. Like that was the original sort of impetus for our work. And we always had that as an idea, especially in our first few years. We're like, that's what we want to do. And we were working toward that, but we didn't know what it would look like to actually get to that point necessarily. We were in uncharted territory, really. So, but one time, Beatrice, or after a few years of her working with us, she actually came to us and was like, I I'm not going to crochet anymore. And we're like, well, why? She's like, well, I'm making too much money at all of my other businesses. It doesn't really make sense for me to be here. And we're like, just kind of jaw drop. We're like, yeah, oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. Why are you here? Like, if you have other businesses happening and you're making more money, like, don't let us hold you back, right? Like
Yeah.
that. Do that. Be you. Like, accomplish and do the things that are giving you life and providing for your family. And that, I think, is something that always sticks with me when we just sort of talk about the capabilities of people. We talk about what it means to empower somebody. That's something that I'll never forget.
That's incredible. I love that. Essentially, you helped and empowered that person to rise above, and then your job was done, really,
Yeah,
which is incredible. I love it.
yeah.
Cole, give me some advice or one piece of advice if somebody's watching or listening to this that has a small brand or business, no matter what industry they're in, something tangible that they could implement or spark the inspiration to lead a more ethical or sustainable purpose with what they do.
Yeah. So one of the things that, because I, sort of operated in this world of social entrepreneurship for a long time. I mean, for my whole adult life, really. And so I think about it all the time. I've done a lot of writing and, just processing and sharing and speaking when it comes to it. And one of the clear distinctions that I would help just sort of share and help people think about this intersection of doing business, or in business is a lot of things. It's everything from your freelancers to small businesses across any industry to larger businesses. Is, if you're starting to think about impact, I kind of put impact into two buckets. One bucket is what I call post-purchase impact. So this is when you create some sort of give back program or something within your work, where you say, once this item is sold or the service is provided, then we give a percentage of sales. We give a product. We're all very familiar with these types of models in 2020 now. But that's post purchase. The other part of impact, and actually where I encourage people more in, is this idea of pre-purchase impact. And that is to say that the impact, or the positive action, is taking place before a purchase or an exchange or an interaction is even takes place with a customer. um, it's actually embedding the core of your mission into the business operations themselves, right? And I think, in my view, it is so vital to sort of the authenticity of what you are trying to accomplish, and it is something that safeguards that that mission in ways that this sort of pre-purchase or post-purchase impact just really doesn't. If you were to, you know, in our case, it was saying, hey, we're going to employ people, we're going to pay people in developing countries and in very challenging circumstances to make our product. And what that does is when somebody buys that item, it's less about us saying, hey, once you buy this, then we will do something. And it's saying, hey, there's this really great work going on, and we want you to partner with us in helping to see this happen over and over again. Like, join us, be a part of this. This is something that's taking place in the movement that's happening. And I just think that distinction is super important as we look at the future of our businesses, because in, you know, you look at this current time, and if sales aren't there, or if these things aren't there, like post-purchase impact isn't even happening at all, or people are quick to set those things to the side. But if it's built into how our businesses actually function, that has sustainability, that has longevity, that shows commitment, and I think that's what matters most.
Yeah, I love that. And I didn't really think about that in the way you explained it, pre-purchase impact. That's so powerful. I think so many people can learn and figure out quite quickly and easily how they could implement things day
Yeah.
to day or long term for sure. Before we wrap this up, Cole, I'd like to know, I can think of some brands and companies that inspire me that I think are doing a great job, but is there a person or a brand or company that pops in your mind that inspires you, whether they're advocating for things or whether it's through ethics or sustainability?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple just within my world or my space when it comes to the clothes that we buy. You know, I when it comes to somebody who's been in it and just sort of consistent throughout. Patagonia, they get pointed to a lot, but I think the credit's pretty well deserved. And I just think part of that, if you haven't read Let My People Go Surfing by Yvon Chouinard, the founder, it's a great read, and you get a sense for this concept that he talks a lot about in the book, which is like building a brand that's going to be around in 100 years. Um, think about that, and how do you structure your business from a sustainability standpoint, from a employee care standpoint, from everything. So they're really interesting. Another a local one, more in the like women's space, is a brand called Reformation. Um, they do a lot of really good work with like local USA made production, um, sustainability. They've been early to that conversation and have done just like a phenomenal job. And then there's just a million, like the things that inspire me are people who are just putting themselves and their ideas out there. Small businesses, from, you know, my friend Sean Woolsey, who's a furniture maker here, to designer. Ugmonk is what he goes by. That are just building real authentic communities and honestly like putting their ideas out into the world and continuing to do it over and over again. If anybody's ever tried their hand at entrepreneurship, they know that that's the hardest thing to do, or try their hand at anything. Running, I know you're a runner, Luke. It's like it's easy to like just, you know, go out for a jog once a month. It's a lot different thing to commit to 30 days of running like you're doing. So that consistency and the people who are just showing up and building real communities, regardless of like what the outsiders would view as like scale or success, but are doing it authentically, like those people fire me up.
Yeah, I love that. And to unpack that really quickly, three words that came to mind was consistency, community, and impact. And
Yeah.
I think it just even thinking about those are super important.
Yeah.
Cole, I can't thank you enough again for your time. You are an incredible human being. Now I've learned more about everything that you've done over time. Blows my mind, and I hope it truly inspires other people as well. May you carry on for a long time doing what you're doing. I love you for that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. Thanks for all you're doing to encourage and spark this conversation and introduce it to others. I just loved the conversation, loved to be a part of it today.
Thank you, mate. We'll catch up soon.
Cool.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, that was an incredible conversation. I think Kohl and the work he does with Known Supply and Crochet Kids is just unbelievable. I hope you've been inspired. We have some more guests and conversations coming up, so please join again. We'll see you soon. Bye.